perspective. So the next panel member is Bijay Sapkota. He's an international student from Nepal, studying at UTS, and Bijay is the president of the Council of International Students Australia. And when we were talking about what he might like to talk about is, he said, taking education out of its box, relevance of universities beyond education. And I almost felt when we talked, Bijay, that you are interested in turning that a little bit on its head, because you said you're interested in how does Australian education prepare the students to work outside Australia, the international students, when they return. And we don't often think about it that way around, so it's a little bit turning it on its head. So currently Bijay is studying global studies at UTS, but he started studying Bachelor of Civil Engineering Honours and decided it wasn't for him and made that important swap. He's also on University Council there, and in 2016 Bijay was the International Student of the Year in New South Wales. So congratulations. Should we just give
Hello everyone. Can you hear me well? Yeah? Perfect. All right, hello everyone. I can convey the message that I want to convey in Bijay Sapkota style of presentation. So I'll be talking from a different angle than majority of our colleagues here, from a different perspective, from students' perspective, and particularly from international students' perspective, about the value for investment, taking education out of the box. In the initial portion of my slide, I'll be talking about the education sector, what international students bring to the community and things like that. The second part, I'll be talking about the value for investment, or the retention of the value for investment that international students put in Australian education, Australian higher education institutions. I'll also be touching base on international students' fees and expenses. On the last portion of my presentation, I'll be giving a few recommendations, such as embedding entrepreneurship, leadership, and recognizing co-curricular activities and giving recognitions to those activities for international students who actually tend to return back to their countries. The gist of this story is global leaders are innovators, such as Mark Zuckerberg. When you talk about Steve Jobs, now these guys are not just products of international or academic learning, they are actually products of co-curricular activities. So I'll move on to my first slide. Alright, so we all know that Australian higher education is, or international education is the third largest export sector. Australia is the third most preferred study destination. Oh, can I go next? Yes, alright. Okay, so last year, sorry for the outdated facts, I mean you'd have these details more updated than us, but yeah, last year alone, international education was worth around, it created an income of around $32 billion until June 2018, and it's actually continuing to grow over time. International students, when you talk about international students, they don't just, sorry about that, I just have to go back to my previous slide. But when we talk about international students, we just have this stereotype comments, in media and everywhere where we see everyone talking about $32 billion industry, but forgetting about what other contributions international students make to the Australian community or the wider community, either it be promoting soft diplomacy across the world, or other sectors like tourism and hospitality being highly impacted by Australian international students in Australia. Alright, so one of the reasons, a few of the reasons why international students come to Australia is safe destination, world-class education, good alumni networks, great student experience, and also few students who come from low socioeconomic nations come with migration incentives. That's something that we shouldn't be forgetting as well. So we all know the living cost, expenses is growing day by day. International students have to spend around probably about $20,000 on accommodation, living expenses, and about $30,000 in average in doing any undergraduate degrees, and about $17,000 to $40,000 in postgraduate degrees, which means it could cost them, like an undergraduate student, about $200,000 during their entire undergraduate degree. So again, it's leading to the conversation that we are going forward about what is the value for this investment they are getting out of Australian education, and is the sector going to be sustainable? So one of the points that I'm trying to make through this presentation is, when we are talking about the growing number of international students in Australia, if we fail to recognize that these students, if they tend to return back to their countries, if they do not retain that value for investment, if they do not achieve what they're meant to achieve out of this investment, it's going to be very risky. When you talk about average salaries in different countries, like some of the countries like India, Nepal, China, or other countries with less salary base, and in some of the countries, it could take students a lifetime to recover that investment in Australian education. And a few subjects, let's say, Australian migration policies, again, we have to link it together with these issues. So one of the few recommendations that I wanted to give through this presentation is, if we could recognize co-curricular activities, then these students could be competent around the world. Taking the examples of student leaders in Australia, like ourselves, I came in with an intention to do an engineering course, but later on moved on to global studies, and based on my curricular activities, my career is secure. One of the recommendations, again, is embedding leadership, entrepreneurship into the coursework, into the academic learning for these students. This chart clearly elucidates that 90% of the people remember what they do, and just 10% of the people would remember what they read. So it's very important to get them engaged, to get leadership, entrepreneurship in our co-curricular activities, and also strong alumni support strategies should be embedded into universities, and it should be a prime focus of the universities, because international students, as I said before, are largest or the major source of revenue for majority of the institutions in Australia. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to promote our national conference. We are hosting our national conference from July 15 to 19 this year in Perth, and we're expecting it to be the best and the biggest international students conference in the history of our organization as well. So we'd like to welcome you all to our national conference, and be engaged, get to know more about international students' issues. Again, it's very important. It's a lot of times we see international students sidelined. However, it's absolutely important for university institutions to understand that international students, if they succeed, universities could succeed exponentially throughout the world. All right, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
That is one of the best ways to release creativity and get the grassroots involved. The second thing is, institutions have very strong global network. However, it's very rare to see that universities, in Australia particularly, have been utilizing that network. For example, Harvard University has its products who utilize the name of Harvard University, get into political leadership or other forms of leadership back in their country, and the university has different kind of support mechanisms, different kind of networking for those particular students. So universities in Australia as well have their students doing great stuff all around the world. However, they haven't been able to get those students together, have that specific network, and utilize that student, or the graduates for the betterment of the upcoming graduates.
And what you just said resonates very much with the new ideas and solutions.